Fat Footprints, a short story written and read by Anne Goodwin from my identity-themed collection, Becoming Someone. Fat Footprints. When the heat had dissipated somewhat, Selina and Sam went for a stroll to work up an appetite for dinner. At that hour, abandoned by all but the most stubborn souvenir sellers and tourists, the beach seemed their exclusive domain. Sauntering hand in hand, as waves roared across the reef and pale crabs scuttled off to bury themselves in the sand, they relished the freedom to go barefoot for one last day. After a while, they turned to measure the distance they had strayed from the thatched roofed chalet that had been their home for the past 10 days. Selina gasped. Day-glow pink fringed the horizon, but it wasn't the overture to another splendid sunset that caught her attention. Look at our footprints, they're enormous. Sam squatted to check that the bloated indentations were not merely a trick of the light. Freaky. Selina gazed back over the meandering path their feet had traced along the beach. Each print seemed double its usual size. What makes them go like that? Must be something about the type of sand, said Sam. But sand is just sand. Well, actually, Sam slipped into what Selina's mother termed his pompous Englishman voice. Sand is constructed of grains of silica bonded together by water. The composition varies with the proportion of water and coarseness of the sand. The particles must have expanded under pressure, making our feet appear bigger than they are. But his are like a baby's, Selina pointed out a homebound hawker, a basket of trinkets balanced on his head. Depressions, like dimples, mapped his route from one palm-shaded lounger to another. How can sand stretch some prints and shrink others? I'm sure there's a simple explanation. Fat Footprints makes me feel a slob. You could diet. No chance. Not when there's lobster on the menu for dinner. Shuffling along the check-in queue the next day, they found consolation in the prospect of their next trip. We've got another week's leave to use before the end of the year, said Selina. How about Goa? Why not, said Sam, if we can grab some cheap flights. I'll check online when we get back. Selina leafed through her passport. Strange we haven't been already. She flicked past the pages of skewed immigration stamps to the identification details at the back. Her image, fusing her father's sharp nose and full lips with her mother's blue-black hair and almond eyes, evoked a smile. My ancestors would have had tiny footprints. Sam lifted his gaze from the visa collection in his own passport. What? The Chinese bound women's feet to stop them growing. Selina recalled a pair of embroidered slippers she had seen in a museum in Shanghai. It was hard to believe they weren't designed for a doll. It was considered erotic. Sam nudged their trolley forward. It was barbaric. Lucky for you, civilization's moved on. Their hometown streets were decked with snow. Even in the fleeces they excavated from their luggage, they shivered as they dashed from the taxi to their door. But Selina wasn't so intent on escaping the cold, she didn't notice the ridged imprints of their trainers, swollen to twice their normal size. So it doesn't only happen with sand, she said. But Sam was too busy stoking the central heating boiler to respond. Her mother wanted to hear about passion fruit cocktails, beach barbecues and shoals of rainbow fish. but Selina manoeuvred the conversation around to Chinese traditions. Perhaps she had a great-grandmother whose infant feet had been fashioned to fit those dainty slippers. Her mother cackled. You think your ancestors were free to lounge around all day? Peasants had to work, and for that they needed feet they could walk on. Selina didn't relish the thought, but a diet would be preferable to being dogged by ugly footprints. When the snow melted, she drove to the supermarket to stock up on low-calorie meals. Returning the trolley to the collection point after loading up the car, she felt lighter already. But turning back to her treasured white convertible, she startled. 4 broad lines of tyre tread ran from her wheels right across the car park, as if she'd parked in a muddy field. To avoid her car's fat footprints, Selina resolved to cycle to work. Sam thought she was mad. It'll take hours. Selina set the alarm. That's okay. I need the exercise. Overtaking cars and buses, the journey was exhilarating. She arrived, smug and sweaty, and had availed herself of the staff shower and tackled half her inbox by the time her colleagues emerged from the snarls of rush hour traffic. Her muscles ached for the first few days, but she hardly noticed. She was too excited by the discovery that her bicycle tyres left no mark. Nor were there any footprints when she stepped onto the bathroom scales to monitor the progress of her diet. After dropping 3 kilos, her favourite trousers sagged at the waist. Sam suggested she wore a belt, but she needed a whole new wardrobe. Her mother didn't need persuading to accompany her to the shopping mall. She loved the colour-coded car parks, the up escalators and the down escalators, the bright lights that made it like New Year the whole year round. She loved the sanitised allusions to the traditional high street, the signposts, the mock market stalls peddling baskets of dried flowers, the electric brazier roasting chestnuts she had no inclination to taste. She loved being able to wander from one shop to another with no weather to intervene. Her mother held the bags while Selina grappled with buttons and zips. Each time she stepped out from the changing room, her mother would nod and smile. Very beautiful, you buy it. Until Selina was tempted by a drill trouser suit with a stand-up collar. Her mother shuddered. Horrible, like Chairman Mao. At lunch in the food court, Selina reflected on how different this was from the world her mother was born into. Yet her knowledge of that world was vague. Her mother had never been forthcoming about the past. Selina found it difficult to imagine the well-groomed woman wolfing down the pseudo-Mexican meal ever having worn a Mao suit. Mum, when you were my age. I was never your age. I was born old. Be serious. I want to know what it was like, growing up without... Selina stumbled for the words. Without things. Not even allowed to choose what to wear. Her mother scooped up another forkful of chili from the styrofoam plate. Why worry about such long-ago times? You should be happy. All these new clothes. Along with the clothes, Selina bought bicycle saddlebags. The following afternoon, after chaining her bike to the railing beside the supermarket entrance, she picked up a basket and meandered down the aisles. It was time to get serious about her diet. Fresh fruit and vegetables would be healthier than the ready meals she'd been relying on. Feeling virtuous, Selina loaded the produce onto the conveyor belt. Baby sweet corn and mange tout peas, peppers and courgettes, apples, bananas and pears. Itching to get home to prepare her meal, She hoped there would be room for all her purchases in her panniers. She glanced around idly as she waited for the person ahead to pay. Although the checkout area was busy, no one came to stand behind her. A woman with a trolley load of tins and toilet rolls approached and veered off to join another queue. Nervously, Selina eyed the floor. Dirty fat footprints led all the way from the fruit and vegetable section to her size 4 trainers. Red-faced, she paid for her shopping and hurried out. Despite the weight of her shopping bags, she tried to tread lightly, but the footprints pursued her. She was almost in tears as she fumbled to release her bicycle lock. It didn't make sense. Regardless of her dieting and exercising, her footprints remained fat. Back home, Sam looked up from his laptop. Did it say if we needed a visa? I can't find anything about it here. Did what say? The site where you booked the flights for Goa. I haven't booked any flights. You're such a scatterbrain. He jabbed at the keyboard. It's only a month away. We'll be lucky to get anything now. Selina sighed. I don't want to go. It was your idea. I don't feel like it now. Sam transmogrified into pompous Englishman. I suppose a woman's entitled to change her mind. Where do you feel like going? I don't want to go anywhere. I'm too fat to go on holiday. That's crazy. Are you on your period or something? Selina wondered if she was going crazy. Who but a madwoman would believe she was being stalked by her footprints? Yet she wasn't the only one who'd seen them. Sam on the beach, the shoppers at the checkout. It was less their existence than the lack of logic that threatened to send her over the edge. Her strappy Jimmy Choos left a larger footprint than her clumpy Wellingtons. Her attempts to shed weight lifting weights at the gym would be mocked by the obesity of the prints that followed her home. After a particularly humiliating evening, almost fainting in the sauna because she didn't dare leave her seat, Selina decided drastic action was needed. She would give up her car. Her mother was horrified. It's like selling a kidney. Sam was horrified. It's throwing away your independence. Selina was horrified herself. She used to love revving down country lanes in the summer with the top down. Driving the car to its new home, she wept so much she could have done with windscreen wipers for her eyes. But walking home in the rain, there wasn't a shadow of a footprint on the pavement. Shopping still made her nervous. Before leaving the house, she'd scrutinise her reflection in the wardrobe mirror. Looking supermodel slim in lycra wouldn't necessarily prevent a sooty trail of footprints pursuing her down the aisles. Each trip to the supermarket was like a commando raid. She'd park her bike round the back, grab a few packets of fruit and vegetables and dart out. She didn't always come home with what she'd intended, but she discovered a hinterland of retail of which she was previously unaware. At the back of the superstore, where the shelf stackers took their smoke breaks, were a row of bright blue dumpsters. Spotting staff disgorge cardboard boxes into them, her curiosity was piqued. As soon as the staff returned to their posts, Selina leant her bike against the dumpster and lifted the lid. Inside, it was like a well-stocked but disorganized larder, crammed with packets of food. Exactly the kind of produce she'd planned to buy. Baby sweet corn and monchtu peas from Kenya, peppers and courgettes from Israel, bananas from Costa Rica, apples and pears all the way from New Zealand. Pristine in its wrapping, the food looked fresh, albeit with use-by dates for the previous day. "It's stealing," said Sam later. "Recycling," Selina corrected. "It was only going to waste." "I can't see the point of economising," he said. "It's not as if you're saving up for anything. You won't even go on holiday." Selina couldn't see the point herself, or couldn't put it into words that would convince Sam. "It just seems the right thing to do." "It's not normal," said Sam. "Do you think you could be depressed?" It was true. She'd lost interest in the activities that had defined her. Was she still the same person without her enthusiasm for travel and shopping, or even the gym? While her increasing bank balance brought no particular pleasure, she resisted being diagnosed as depressed. And it struck her that if she wasn't spending money, she didn't need so much coming in. She asked her boss if she could go part-time. For the pompous Englishman, this was further evidence of derangement. "What will you do when you can't afford the next generation phone?" "I'll do without, along with most of the world's population." Sam sniffed. "People use mobiles everywhere, even in the heart of rural China. Ask your mother." "My mother's as bad as you, always after the latest gadget." "Anyway," said Sam, "you'll be bored at home on your own." "No, I won't. I'll take up dressmaking, clear a bit of lawn and grow my own veg, sit in the sun and read." "You'll have no money for books." "I'll use the library." Pompous Englishman stroked his screen. The fainter her footprints, the more Selina fretted that she and Sam were drifting apart. "We don't want the same things anymore," she told her mother. She found him too frivolous. He complained she'd become obsessed. "You need a holiday," said her mother. "Time together with no one else around." Selina shook her head. "I get a panic attack even contemplating boarding a plane." "It is possible to have a holiday in your own country. Remember when we took you to Scotland when you were small? Cosy evenings in their simple log cabin. Her father telling stories by candlelight as they warmed their toes around the fire. The memory made her feel safe and loved, even now. With days exploring rock pools and building sandcastles, she hadn't missed running water or TV. Sam refused to spend an entire day getting there. He'd hire a car at the airport. Selina had to do the 400-mile bus trip alone. On arrival at their cabin, she found the door locked and a hire car parked alongside. Calling Sam's name, her voice was swallowed by the breeze. She couldn't let their relationship end this way, abandoned by pompous Englishmen at an out-of-season holiday home. Selfish Englishmen, not caring enough to hang around to greet her, to run her a hot bath. Dumping her backpack on the veranda, she followed a trail of muddy footprints across a field towards the beach. Despite the snatched sleep on the overnighter, she no longer felt tired. 24 hours apart, and she'd really missed Sam. Missed his smell, his touch, his pompous English voice. She ran, placing her feet in the oversized prints. The mud gave way to sand as the path curled through clumps of marram grass, pricking her legs through her jeans. Cresting a dune, she paused to catch her breath. Below, the cinnamon sand arced around the bay. Apart from the sanderlings pattering along the spume, the beach seemed deserted. Then she saw him. Far in the distance, a lone figure strolling by the water's edge. She was tempted to race across the beach to wrap her arms around him, but how could she let her prince defile the surface of the sand? But she couldn't remain where she was, her feet forming roots in the dunes. Her mother's voice echoed in her head, insisting progress was an unstoppable tide. Squinting against the low sun, she watched Sam's footprints disappear where the water met the sand. Each step carved a crater, but each wave lapped it clean. Not daring to hope too much, she descended to the beach and slipped off her shoes and socks. Tentatively, she placed her feet in Sam's podgy footprints, sucked up the fat through her bare soles, as if channeling the power of the waves. That was Fat Footprints, written and read by Anne Goodwin from my collection, Becoming Someone. Thank you.